Hello everyone, Neb here with Tech Motorsports, and let's pick up what we left off in the last video, part 2, and this is going to be including the bumper removal with the oil cooler, and then finishing off all those coolant hoses and hero hoses that I got from the DO88 kit. So like I stated on the previous part 1 video, it was a little bit more than I thought it was going to end up being. When I opened up the package and I started looking at it, I was like, whoa. And then started looking at what I have to remove to be able to get to most of those. So yeah, so that's what I'm going to end up doing. I'm going to go ahead and start on the bumper first. So that answers your question on which one I was going to end up doing first, being the coolant hoses or the oil cooler. The oil cooler it is, because it's going to probably be easier. And yeah, so let's get straight to it. Okay, so I got the wheel wells, the fender liners already off, so I only took the lower section off. It's I think it's 4 8mm bolts and 2 of the plastic nuts. That takes each side off, and then you have the 2 mils that hold it into here, that just go straight from the bumper up in towards the fender itself on both sides. And now the only thing I need to do is just release or remove these Torx heads right here, and the bumper should come off. So lucky for me, this one didn't have any sensors up front or anything, so I didn't have to disconnect those. So yeah, bumper cover is off and came off pretty darn easy. So yay. Alright, so next thing I'm going to end up doing is there's a 13mm bolt or nut that holds one hose on one side, and the same thing with the other. I'm going to go ahead and release those, drain the oil, because I bought an additional quart so I could go ahead and fill up for the bigger one. So I took that in consideration when we were replacing when we were going to replace it. So I'm going to do that, and I'm also going to remove the one bolt that's here, which is the Torx. And then there's 2 on this side, and that pretty much should be easy. I got my oil pan down towards the bottom, so I'll be able to catch all the oil. So let's get to it. Alright, so next I got the O-rings. I'm going to go ahead and replace those while I'm already here before I got to do the next step. And I got the new ones here. Using the current oil that's on the hoses to lube it up a tad bit. That way it's got some lubrication. Alright. So I've already removed the little silence, the little mounting inserts off the OEM one, and I have to use those on the DO88 one. So that's what I'll be doing right now. Now the intercooler from DO88 came with its own bolts, so I'll be using those. So I won't be using the nuts that I removed. So so yeah, let's mount this puppy. And there she is. It's actually pretty straightforward. A lot more easier than I thought it was going to end up being. So yeah. So now that it's all together, I'm just going to put the bumper back on. And yeah, I guess everything else is put back together. I guess I got to do some coolant hoses now. So I'm dreading it. I really am. Alright, so the bumper's all back together, and the fender liners are installed, and yeah, so as I said before, now it's time for the rest of the coolant hoses and the heater hoses. Yay. Alright, so I'm going to keep plugging away. Alrighty then. The dreaded part, the part that I was saving for last, and guess what? That's pretty much what I got left, is the heater hose / coolant hoses, the remaining ones that are back here stuffed behind the engine. So yeah, if you remember originally, I drained the coolant from the radiator, drained the coolant from as much as I could from the block, which is from the water pump itself, and then one of these main lines where a lot of the coolant came out. There is still remaining coolant in the block, and of course a little in the heater core, but going to try to get as most of it as possible. So as I start thinking through I got a couple plans. So my plan A, what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to replace all the hoses real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and find the ones that I have, and by looking at the floor, I have 4 of them that are unaccounted for, which is what I mean by unaccounted. I have not physically, okay, this one goes here, so that's 4 I got to find. I wish it was just 1, but I have 4 I got to locate. So once I locate and get all that done, I am then going to drain the coolant, the rest of the coolant that's in the block, through the 2 main plugs that are on this engine, 1 on each side towards the rear of the motor itself. That will hopefully drain pretty much the rest of the coolant from the engine, and just leave a little bit remaining in the heater core, which is fine. So if I remember to take a picture of those areas where those plugs are at, they are going to be put here now. All right, so I'm on the left-hand side of the vehicle, driver's side, and here is the oil pan itself right here, and there is the transmission, the cooler line for the DCT, and the oil pan. So for the engine block drain plugs is what we're looking at. So here it is, still on the left-hand side. As you can see, there it is right there. There's the one plug right there. I hope you can focus in, but there's that one there. And then we go to the other side, because there's 2 of them. And then it is located right, and I think it's zoomed in right there. There it is right there. There's the other one. I know it's not, as you can see, my little magnets on there. There we go, try to focus on there. So there it is right there. Those are the 2 engine engine block drain plugs. So yep. So right now I'm just going to plug away and start removing all this mess back in the back, so I could access those heater hoses in the back. Okay, so you did see correctly. So I had to remove the whole engine harness from the center there, put it off to the side. Some of these clips were just a pain in the butt to release, to be able to unlock them. My thumb and my fingertips hurt so bad right now just trying to get these the plugs to come undone. And some of the plastic clips that hold them onto this tray, they end up just being so brittle that it broke. And when it comes to what I keep looking at, is looks like somebody has been in here and has taken some of this stuff away. One of the wires were routed incorrectly, and I was really unable to move it around, so I had to start loosening the spark plugs and the injector side to be able to get any movement. Once I got, which was on the driver's side or left hand side, once I got that release, this was able to move around a little bit more better. But yeah, I moved that over, and also got my secondary pump hoses disconnected. I got those out of the way, and now pretty much I can see the hoses going back to the DCT cooler, and yeah, that's gonna be even more funner. You know, I'm glad I did this last, I guess, because now to the point this is the last thing I got to do just to start bolting everything back together. But whew, boy oh boy, what was I thinking? So yeah, so by looking at it, I've already dropped the DCT transmission pan from underneath, being the pan, the cover itself, just to take a look at the hoses above the cooler. Very little room down there, so I got a couple ideas what I might have to end up doing, but just to get to those two hoses. The ones here are not bad anymore since everything has been removed, but yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and remove the heater control valve, get the lines off of that, replace those lines, and I have the lines down here as well from the front pipe. Going back there, start disconnecting and installing those, and it's just trying to figure out the not so pain in the butt method to remove the two going to the DCT cooler. So so yeah, that's pretty much what I've got for now, and I'm going to keep plugging away. Okay, so now I pretty much have most of the hoses up top already technically removed and set aside. So after checking all my hoses, I found out that the kit that I ended up getting, it looks like it came for a DCT and maybe a manual. There is an additional extra hose that I have left over, and by looking at the diagrams on Real OEM and just kind of doing a little bit of search, it looks like it's the number 6 on one of the diagrams that I saw, and there's two number 6s, and one is the one that looks like that I already have, and there's a spare one that looks like it would go from, I guess I consider this the heater valve, and it might be the accessory water pump, but it goes from the lower section of that, and it goes back to the back here. It either goes to the DCT or it goes to somewhere behind like the head or something, or probably connects to where the DCT hose goes to. So I'm gonna have one extra hose. So yeah, so now it's time to jack the car up and try to figure out how I'm going to take those two hoses above the DCT transmission. So luckily they are quick disconnect ones, but again, you know, if you only have so much room to move them, you know, to be able to slide them out. But most likely I'm going to have to drop the transmission down from the transaxle. Hopefully that gives me enough room, and I'll go from there. So yeah, I'm going to jump on it. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is show you what I had to do to be able to get those the two hoses for the DCT, the cooler that's on top of the transmission. I don't know what the heck BMW were thinking to do that, but let's take a look at what I did to be able to get those two hoses out without having to drop the whole darn engine and transmission out. So let's take a quick peek. All right, here we are on the left-hand side of the vehicle, driver's side, and this is where the oil cooler is at. And the two tubes, the two lines are, I don't know if you can see it, there's one there, and there's the other one right there. So what I had to do was make up something to be able to get the clips off. And as you can see, well, this one, I've got the exhaust off, and I did them on both sides. This is aftermarket exhaust. And what I also ended up doing was I dropped the transmission as far as it would go, so it's just kind of just sitting there. If you look, there's really not that much of a gap, but it is, I think, at least enough to give me a little bit more room between here to be able to get to look and be able to maneuver my tool in there. So I'll take, let me show you the tool I used. All right, so this one here, when it's plugged into the cooler, it pretty much sits right about like that. So you're able to get a 90-degree pick here and on the bottom and be able to push that out, and then you could slide it out. Now, the one that is the other one is this one here, but this one is a little bit more tougher because it sits behind here. So if it's technically, let me just try to, it's technically sitting, if it's in the car, it's sitting like this. So if you look, you could get this one out of the way, but the clips here are facing down to push up. So this is where I got a nice little long, sturdy, this is a very thick clothes hanger, and used, it's not even focusing it, and used that to be able to get it and caught underneath, get it caught underneath the clip and push up from underneath the car. And then the clip pretty much almost was coming off, but it came off to where I was able to come up to the top and then just wiggle it off, and voila, she's off. Now, here's the other thing that I'm worried about. Is how in the heck to get it back on. That's where I got to figure that out. So right now, let's take a look at all the hoses, because I wanted to take all the hoses off and put them next to one another just so I can get an idea of what I got, and then I will show you the extra hose I have. Alright, so here are the hoses. So as you can say, I've put all the hoses that I came in the kit with the ones I've removed from the car. So this is the lower radiator, the upper radiator hose with the small little one for the surge tank. And there's two more right there. Those are, I forget which one is which, but there's those right there. This is the lower radiator hose. That one is still located on the radiator, so that one's just sitting there by itself. And then there's the other one here. And then we have the long one, which this is the one in front of the engine. And then we have the heat valve or the accessory pump, however they want to call it nowadays. So there's the one here. There's that one there, and this is the one that is connected to the one I just was having a huge pain, and that's the one that goes to the DCT cooler. So that one there, and this is the oddball one. This is the one that's left. I removed all the coolant hoses, and this one is the lonely boy. Like I stated earlier, when I'm looking at a couple diagrams, this one seems to be the one if you're not running a DCT transmission. That one is the manual, and it'll connect to the lower section here of I'm calling it the heat valve, and instead of going to the DCT, this one connects to that, and this one goes on the back of the coolant pipe that connects both cylinder heads together. Now it's time to remove some of these connectors and put them in their place and clock them correctly on a table so they're easy to do, because I don't want to have to be adjusting and doing any of that kind of stuff with the hose clamps once they're in place. So that's the next step. So here are the hoses. They're all put together. What I ended up doing was on the connectors here, these kind, I end up marking them with a magic marker. And then I cut the bands off and also mark the hose. That way they're clocked correctly. And so like these small ones, these are the ones that I did one at a time to make sure I put these correctly, so that way they snap on and I don't have to worry about loosening them and tightening them. Also, I'm hoping that I have the hose clamps clocked correctly. That way they're not fearing anything while I put them into place. The bigger ones, the ones that are easy to get to, I kind of got those snug. I could rotate those and move them if need be. This one, which goes to the DCT cooler, that's the one I'm more worried about. And this one right here, these two are the ones that are more important, because once they're clipped into place, I'm hoping I don't have to unclip them. But what I'm going to end up doing as well is dousing them with WD-40, so that way they slide in nice and smooth. I'm going to have my clips in place, so I should be able to hear them clip. And that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and start installing these. All right, so this is the first one I'm going to end up installing them, of course, in reverse order. So this is the last one I took out. This one goes to the DCT cooler, and this one goes to the heater core. So this will be the first ones to get out of the way, put in place, and then I will work and finish off the DCT one as well, which goes back to the pipe that connects to both cylinder heads. So I'm going to do that and just start the process of reinstalling them all.
All right, so here we go. So finally got the hoses all back together. There's the heat valve or accessory pump, and got it all back in there, and then the two that go to the DCT cooler. You can see those going back there. So let's touch base on those two puppies in the back real quick. All right, so on the rear hoses, as I stated previously, it was easier to remove than easier to reinstall. So let's go over the installation in case anybody decides to do this. So the long hose is the one that goes to the back of the cooler, and the short hose goes to the front of the cooler. And I'm saying, meaning that from this point going that way. So the rear one, I had to take it off 3 times after I got it clipped into place because I wasn't 100% sure that I had it in. And what it was is it was rotating on me. And these have these little slots where to get it to go into place, like this one here and then one here up top. And that's where I was looking for. So when I took it off the 3rd time, I finally was able to walk my finger and use a mirror all the way around. And I noticed that that one does not have any of those little pins for it to slide in. So once you get it clipped into place, you can rotate it, which that's what was throwing me off. So now the one with the short hose, that one does have the little slots, so you got to get that into place. But I had to pull this up to be able to get it in. I could not get it to clip with this clip. I couldn't get it to lock with this clip all the way compressed already. So there's very little room to go ahead and do that. So yeah, as I stated earlier as well, I was trying to get these hose clamps clocked in the right position so I wouldn't have to move them around, the ones that were tightened. Fortunately, dang it, I almost had to do all of them just to get them to clear everything. Again, the ones you take off don't have hose clamps. They're the clip ones or the quick connect. So yeah, that was the only other thing I had to end up doing. But yeah, next thing I'm going to end up doing is going underneath, installing everything, bolting back the bracket for the transmission, putting the exhaust back on. I'm going to leave this one for the front and the rest of it here at a later point. I want to go ahead and get this done and this wrapped up because the surge tank will technically be in the way when I go to try to tighten these, so I want to have the surge tank out. So yeah, I'm going to keep plugging away at it.
now that the radiator is installed, what I ended up doing was taking a look at what item I was going to end up installing, being the idler pulley or the fan pulley. I'm sorry, the fan pulley, but the water pump pulley, and the belt. And then when I did that, when I was looking around, I realized that there's a hose clamp on the lower section of the power steering reservoir. Well, with the new hose being there, it looked like it's rubbing a tad bit. So what I ended up doing is I took the lower hose, the small hose, off the reservoir, and moved the clamp around so that it wouldn't rub anymore. And since I had it out, I realized that line goes to the oil cooler, and from the oil cooler I follow that line and it goes to the power steering rack. So what I ended up doing is I disconnected the hose off the power steering rack and put compressed air into the system there, and got more fluid out, so that way there is more fresh fluid in the power steering system. So while I was down there, I went ahead and replaced the drain plugs for the oil pan. So that's already been done. At first I just put the older ones back in. So those have been taken care of. I've already installed and removed the old filter, so the new filter's in for the oil. And yeah, and I don't know if you've looked, but she's much cleaner now. I put a little bit of elbow grease on her, but got her all nicely dialed in. So yeah, I'm just gonna pick up right where I stopped earlier, and plug away with the pulleys and the belts, and just work my way with the rest of the stuff. So yep, let's keep plugging away. So I had to remove the pulleys, or one of the pulleys, the idler pulley. I had to remove that. I installed that first, and I was backwards. I needed to install the water pump pulley first and get that belt completely installed, and then go back over here and install the idler pulley, and install that the double serpentine belt. So yeah, so she's all tight, she's all together, and yeah, I'm just gonna keep plugging away at it. All right, so now that pretty much all the hoses, all the belts, all that stuff is back on, I connected my battery charger. I need to have the ignition on, and also what I did is I turned the heater up all the way up to 84, and so I have that running, and I got my vacuum system here for the coolant system. So I'm going to suck it down and add a vacuum, and see if it holds, and it should stay steady at wherever I stop it at. And at that point, if she stays steady, it doesn't start to drop, then it means I have no coolant leaks or no leaks. So at that point, then I could go ahead and add the coolant to it. So yeah, and then the coolant is just I'll have it in a bottle. It's got the suction cup on it, so when I open the valve, it just sucks the coolant out and pretty much eliminates any air pockets at all in the system. So yeah, so I'm going to get to that. All right, right when I start creating the vacuum, take a peek at the two main hoses here. This is ones you'll be able to tell. Once I pull it in the vacuum, it'll start squeezing these together, and pretty much taking all the air out of the system. So yep, let me jump right to it. All right, so she's pretty much done now. Got everything all back together now. So the trim, the cowl in the back, and also at the same time I went ahead and added all the fluids to the vehicle, being the engine oil and then the power steering. And also while I had it up on the lift, I had everything running, checking underneath, make sure there was no leaks. I bled the power steering system. So go ahead and got that done. So lower the car down. She's pretty much ready for a test drive. And yeah, so my plan is going out for a small little test drive, bring it back in, check underneath, make sure there's nothing out of the ordinary, and then go from there. So see you in a bit. All right, everyone, so the E92 is done. So let me just give you a quick summary of what I did. So I took it for two different test drives. The first test drive was a very short, kept the RPMs down a decent amount, and just went to check everything on the coolant side, make sure there was no leak. So I got it on the lift, everything checked out, hunky-dory, so we were at 2 thumbs up. So then immediately after that, I took it for another much more longer test drive, went a little bit further on the power range, and I did find 2 little small issues, and I'm going to start with the second issue. And the second issue is I heard a little bit of rubbing in the rear. Because I worked on the front of the car, I really didn't look underneath or anything like that. But once I got it up on the lift this morning, after the second test drive, I found out what the issue is. So I'll speak to Dylan about that and get that resolved. But so the first issue was it was under acceleration. Had no radio on, no nothing like that. So all it was just the engine noise and the exhaust. And I would hear a whistling noise once I applied the throttle ever so slightly. So when I kept going off and on the throttle, I would hear it whistle. So during that time frame is I'm thinking, okay, what could cause it? What could it be? So the first thing that came to mind was the air filter. The air filter was pretty dirty before I installed it. I cleaned it out. I knocked it on the ground. There was a lot of dirt that came out of it. So I was thinking, wow, maybe it could be something like that. But the other thing, of course, is like, okay, maybe a lid, maybe something. The boot. I know there was an issue with the boot before going into the intake plenum. That would come loose. And what they end up doing is they put a screw there so it could stay together. So I had to look at some of that stuff. So I took it all apart this morning, went through everything. I took the whole entire lid apart, and that's when I found the back end of the lid was cracked open a little bit, so it didn't fall in its little groove. So that was one thing I found. But then I checked everything else. I checked all the boots, on the intake boots themselves, the idle control valve on the back, and also the little small one up front. I checked those to make sure they were all clipped in, and everything looked fine. So I'm gonna let it go like that and see if it changes, if the whistling goes away or persists. Maybe we have to just get a new air filter, and if it keeps going, if it's, I'll take a look at it again. But yeah, so now that we're talking about the dirty air filter, I mean, that right there, when I looked at it and I'm knocking it, I'm thinking, golly, man, there's a lot of dirt coming out of this thing. And I'm starting to think, I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure Mr. Dylan has had some off-road excursions on this car since he's taken it to the track. That's what it's got to be. He doesn't live down any dirt roads. Now, of course, some of the roads do have a little bit of dirt, but that was a lot. But I led with that to go into my next story. I know he's had a little bit of off-road excursions, just because when we were at our SCCA event, it was a handful of months ago, we both were getting our nervous permit. Luckily for him, he's doing it at a very young age. Not good for me, but I'm still getting it done at a not so much, older age. No. Young at heart. And so yeah, so at one of the occasions while we're there at the SCCA, he was lined up first. I was right behind him, and he's on Code Slicks, and I'm on, of course, not super slicks, but I had the Toyo 888. And so he's ahead of me. We get the green flag. He goes into the first corner, and he gets the back end loose, keeps it. Like, all right. Goes into the next corner. Same thing. At that point, I'm like, Dylan needs to slow down. If he doesn't slow down, he's gonna spin out. And I kid you not, guess what happened? He spun out. Oh my goodness. So it was like pretty much the third one. And he was just, I know he was getting intimidated by me being in the back. Maybe I could have been a little bit too closer to him, who knows, but I know he wanted to keep me in back of him for as long as he could. And he spun out right in front of me, and that was just so hilarious. Unfortunately, that wasn't his only spin out that weekend. He had numerous ones. So, but yeah. But the reason why I was going into that also is that we're going to go to another race event. We're both going to be there, and he will be posting his stuff up on his YouTube channel. His YouTube channel, in case you guys want to follow and take a look, it is Dylan Dana. And if you want to follow him on Instagram, he is DD_FC_T. So yeah. So for if you guys look at his YouTube channel, you could probably see me for that event I was just talking about when he spun out. You could probably see that on one of his videos. And if you look, I think he even mentions me. I'm in the background, but you can see me in the background. But unfortunately it only lasted for 3 corners. So yeah, so like always guys, I appreciate you watching. To help the channel out, you gotta hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hopefully you guys look at the next videos I do. So yeah, end of the video, and hope to see you in the next one.